Good afternoon. My name is Val Alonso, class of 96, and I am the Southwest Regional Director. I invite you to bow your heads and join us in prayer. Gracious God, we gather together beneath the Golden Dome, grateful for the opportunity to reunite as a Notre Dame family. Today, we ask for your blessing as we honor the creative work of our alumni. We ask that you inspire us to be authors of kindness in our own lives and creators of a more beautiful world. May the achievements of our fellow alumni remind us that our talents are most meaningful when they are used to voice our values and visualize our hopes. Bless this food, this fellowship, and the work of those we honor today. May Our Lady continue to guide us in all that we do. Amen.
I'm going to make the introduction to our first award winner today, Mike Benson. An introduction of Mike Benson could take all afternoon, justifiably so. But for practical reasons, unfortunately, Mike, it won't. I could tell you at length about the major reason he won this award, because of the quantity and quality of his writings. I could tell you about the 2 books he authored and one he co-authored, the score of articles and op-ed pieces that he has written, the awards he has won for his writing, the cities and places, countries around the world he's been invited to speak at because of his writings, from Bahrain to Notre Dame. All of this done, almost unbelievably, while he was a college or university president. But I won't go into depth about those things because there's something more important about Mike. And that's the fact of his commitment to and living of the values of Notre Dame. One example of that is when he was a student in the not-for-profit administration master's degree program at Notre Dame. His fellow students voted for him to receive the Hesburgh Founders Award. That award's given for many reasons, but one of them is for the student who best exemplifies a servant heart. A few years later, he won the Notre Dame Alumni Service Award. When he won the Hesburgh Founders Award, Mike said this: "Those of us fortunate enough to have been a student at Notre Dame have been given an incredible opportunity and blessing, and it's our responsibility to take that and try to make a difference in others." Mike's words remind me about the story of Abraham Lincoln. During the depths of the Civil War, to have a respite from time to time, he would go to a local Presbyterian midday service. He generally would come a little late, enter by a side door, and leave a little early, leave by that same door, not to attract a crowd. Well, one day his assistant went with him, and as they were walking back after the service, his assistant said, "Mr. President, did you like the sermon today?" And Lincoln said, "I thought it was eloquent, well thought out, powerfully delivered." "Then you liked it," his assistant said. "No," Lincoln said. "It did not ask of us something great." It would seem ideal if the person chosen for the Griffin Award was not only a wonderful writer, but also a wonderful person, ethical, generous, thoughtful, someone who was a great representative of the values of Notre Dame, someone who expected of himself and Notre Dame something great. That person is Mike Benson. It's my privilege to introduce you to the winner of this year's Griffin Award, President Michael Benson.
Thank you. I am no dummy. That standing ovation is for Tom Burrish, one of the most articulate, kind, generous souls I've ever met. And Tom, your friendship means so much to me. And I'll tell a story about Tom in just a second. First off, I want to thank the Alumni Association for this singular honor, and also recognize my fellow honoree, Melissa. I read her bio, and I've not designed any buildings in my life. What a career she's had, and congratulations to Melissa. To be in the honor of such amazing, extraordinary writers and bestsellers like Nicholas Sparks, who sold multiple millions more than my books ever did. It's truly humbling, and I thank you again for this recognition. I want to thank Dolly. Dolly called me back in December on the eve of my very first West Virginia University commencement. And I silently got a chance to celebrate with our Mountaineers the next day as they graduated. Well, that meant so much to me. Thank you. I married into a family of Notre Dame graduates, and my association with this university since 2006 has richly blessed my life. This is an extraordinary place filled with striving people, all committed to the fulfillment of the university's unique and inspiring mission. I would not be here today without my wife and my best friend, Debbie. In June, we will celebrate 20 years of marriage. Franz Schubert once said this: "Happy is the man who finds a true friend, and far happier is he who finds that true friend in his wife." Thank you, Debbie, for being my true friend and greatest supporter. I'm also pleased to have had my oldest son, Sam, who was here earlier. He's hands down the best writer in the family. He writes for Politico in Washington, D.C., and he had to leave early to spend 2 days with Vivek Ramaswamy in Youngstown, Ohio, since he's covering gubernatorial and midterm elections. My older brother, Steve, won a Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning in 1993. And I predict that Sam will be the second Benson family to win a Pulitzer. I tell him there are no expectations, Sam, but you better do it. He is a terrific writer. I strongly encourage you to read his work. Our oldest daughter, Emma, is a TV reporter, a journalist working for KSL TV in Salt Lake City as a medical reporter. I'm really proud of her. Also in attendance, you've heard from him already, my dear friend, the former president of Washington Lee and provost at Vanderbilt and here, a combined term of service of a quarter of a century, and as good a provost as I've ever seen, next to my good friend Dan Ennis, and I'll get to him in a second. When I graduated from Notre Dame in May of 2011, our youngest child, Talmadge, was 18 months old and in a stroller. Our other two kids, Truman and Tatum, were 4 and 3 respectively. Naturally, I thought it was a great idea to pop in unannounced to Provost Burrish's office on a Friday afternoon to say hello with all the kids in tow, and a freshly topped off 32-ounce Diet Coke in the top cup holder of the stroller. Talmadge was extremely fidgety as a youngster. That has paid off handsomely as he is currently a scratch golfer as a 15-year-old sophomore, and coaches today would say he is twitchy, which I guess is a good thing. Well, Tal kind of bowed up and tipped over the stroller, resulting in the complete spillage of all 32 ounces of Diet Coke on Dr. Burrish's gold carpet. Like a puma, Tom leapt into action with a roll of paper towels and cleaned up the mess. But our embarrassment for causing such a fracas remains to this day. Tom, do you remember this? Still in all, Tom found it in his heart to nominate me for this award, and I'm so grateful, Tom. You were so kind, and I'm, again, deeply blessed by your friendship. I'm also very grateful to have my dear friend Dan Ennis with his beautiful wife, Jen. Dan was our provost at Coastal Carolina University, and one of the best colleagues I've ever had in my 30-plus years of working in public higher education. Dan now serves as president of Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. His home is squarely inside the Mississippi Delta, home to some of America's greatest writers, including Shelby Foote, Tennessee Williams, Elizabeth Spencer, and a name you all know here, Walker Percy, recipient of the Luther Medal. The Masters of Nonprofit Administration, founded by Father Hesburgh in 1954, and originally called the Master of Science in Institutional Administration, is an unequaled educational experience. Thanks to the diverse and accomplished students who make up each cohort, the dedicated staff who attend to every detail, and the accomplished faculty who made the experience so incredibly memorable, rewarding, and beneficial. I'm honored to have 2 of those Mendoza College of Business faculty here today. John Hollerman from Finance, who made me fall in love with finance, and I mean that, John. A fascinating course that I, to this day, use every single day. And, of course, Ken Milani from Accounting. I could tell stories for the rest of the afternoon about these experiences, but I know our time is limited, but please allow me just to tell one. My academic discipline is as an historian, so I did my best throughout my undergraduate years to avoid all those courses that one needs to run an annual operation of $1.2 billion like we have at West Virginia University. So, needless to say, stats and accounting were a struggle for me. One day, at the beginning of our accounting class, Professor Milani asked if anyone knew the meaning of C.S.C. in Italian. Well, at age 19, I left Brigham Young University after my freshman year to serve a 2-year church mission to Italy. I thought, here we go. Here's my chance to show off my Italian proficiency and score some points with Cubs-loving Ken Milani. Anything I ventured would help. So I boldly responded to Professor Milani that the meaning in Italian was this: Congregazione di Santa Croce, Congregation of the Holy Cross. Proud of my rapid response, I thought I had nailed it with the extra flair of a proper Italian accent. To my disappointment, Professor Milani said I was incorrect. Rather, he said, accountants like him and countless others found great satisfaction asserting that C.S.C. stood for this: cash, sweet cash. I've told that story many times, and it always elicits a great deal of response, and Ken, I remember that story to this day. There are a lot more Milani stories from where that came from. One more couple I'd like to recognize are Bill and Kim Brennan. Bill was a classmate of my brother-in-law, Bob Woods, in the full-time MBA program many years ago. The Brennans were immediately adopted into the Woods family, and in turn, they adopted me as their house guest in the summers of 2009 and 10 as I completed the MNA. Longtime employees of the Mendoza College, Bill and Kim remain some of our dearest friends, and I'm very sorry they couldn't be here today given the surgery that Bill recently had. This award means so much to me personally, as I've always loved to write and appreciate the power of both written and spoken word. As I conclude, I just want to share a couple of experiences real quick. As I prepared to give my third inaugural address, this time in Richmond, Kentucky, in 2014, I determined that I wanted to do some research and read some really good speeches so I could then deliver a better speech. It was, in fact, due to the fact that my kids said my 2 previous addresses were mid, as the youngsters say today. Nothing like unvarnished truth from your children. My research and reading landed me on an address given in February of 1876 in downtown Baltimore at the Academy of Music. It was delivered by a Yale-trained geographer named Daniel Coit Gilman, who 4 years previous had been appointed the 3rd president of the University of California. Given his reputation and achievements, he was aggressively recruited by the hand-picked trustees, each of whom was named to the board by the donor himself of a brand new university, Johns Hopkins, the first ever private institution in America, founded with a $7 million bequest, the largest gift in higher ed in our country at the time. It was made in 1869. At his inauguration, commemorated to this day as University Day in Baltimore, Gilman spoke for 90 minutes, back at a time when people's attention spans were longer and where oratory was an art form and nobody was on their cell phone. As Gilman's speech continued to its inexorable crescendo, he noted the surge in interest in education, not only in post-Civil War America, but around the globe, with a singular focus on what was happening right here in our country. He then asked rhetorically, "The oldest and the remotest nations are looking here for light. What is the significance of all this activity? What follows is, for me, the most powerful, succinct, and beautiful summary of what a university's purpose can and should be, and I believe it perfectly and beautifully describes the ethos of Notre Dame." Gilman said this: "It is a reaching out for a better state of society than now exists. It is a dim but an indelible impression of the value of learning. It is a craving for intellectual and moral growth. It is a longing to interpret the laws of creation. It means a wish for less misery among the poor, less ignorance in schools, less bigotry in the temple, less suffering in the hospital, less fraud in business, less folly in politics. It means more study of nature, more love of art, more lessons from history, more security in property, more health in cities, more virtue in the country, more wisdom in legislation, more intelligence, more happiness, more religion." When Hopkins celebrated its 125th anniversary in 2001, the university produced a beautiful coffee table book entitled Knowledge for the World. In it, they outlined 12 aspirational goals set forth by Gilman in 1876. Hopkins had achieved every single one of them. On my early morning walk today, I read portions from an 1842 Father Sorin letter to his colleagues in France, illustrating the parallel experiences of both Notre Dame and Johns Hopkins. Sorin wrote from the banks of the lake, quote, "As there is no other school within more than 100 miles, this college cannot fail to succeed. Before long, it will develop on a large scale. It will be one of the most powerful means for good in this country." Powerful indeed. That was probably written from a teeny little cabin on the shores of a frozen lake. Another significant goal of Gilman's, which came at the end of his 25-year tenure as Hopkins president, was to establish standards and requirements for the American Research Doctorate, the PhD. This, in turn, motivated Gilman to recruit 4 other colleagues from the universities of Chicago and California, all presidents, along with Harvard and Columbia, to establish what is known today as the Association of American Universities in 1900. Notre Dame, without a medical center, an academic medical center, along with 5 other universities, was admitted as the newest member of the AAU in 2023. And I think he deserves a round of applause, Dr. Burrish, for his help in helping us get there. Congratulations. Finally, please allow me one more personal story. A few weeks ago, I was in Houston for a West Virginia University Foundation board meeting. Our group visited the Johnson Space Center and other NASA-related sites. What I really wanted to see, however, was the location where arguably one of the most famous presidential pronouncements of all time, John F. Kennedy's 1962 moonshot speech at Rice University's football stadium. Last Friday night at dinner with my family, like millions of others around the globe, we marveled at the safe and successful splashdown of the 4 astronauts who made up the Artemis II crew. On time, by the way. Airlines could learn something from that, couldn't they, Dolly? Traveling farther from planet Earth than any others had in the history of mankind. We watched literally the fulfillment of the vision, of JFK, whose immortal words from 64 years ago still inspire us today. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. In a few months, West Virginia University will publicly launch its boldest and biggest fundraising campaign with a stated goal of over $2 billion. I know that's probably 6 months of receipts at Notre Dame, but we're trying our best. As you probably know, West Virginia University is the only R1 flagship land-grant university in the entire state, which has a population of less than 1.8 million people. We may be small, but West Virginians are gritty, hardworking, and welcoming. And the Mountain State has produced stargazing citizens like Katherine Johnson of Hidden Figures fame, and Homer Hickam, best-selling author of Rocket Boys and the primary character in October Sky. I've also learned that WVU is still angry over its 34-21 loss to Notre Dame in the 1988 National Championship game, capping off Coach Lou Holtz's perfect 12-0 season. He is, by the way, a native of Follinsby, West Virginia. As a university, this fundraising effort is a challenge we are willing to accept and one which we intend to win. And like my higher education hero, Daniel Coy Gilman, we also intend to use words, written and spoken, to lift and inspire, spurring people to action and producing results which will bless countless lives. Thank you again for this most generous honor, forever linking me to the company of writers I greatly admire and a university I dearly love. Thank you very much.